Okay guys, so these are some learning activities associated with the A1 anatomical language topic within Unit 2 Functional Anatomy. So have a little look and have a go at these activities. First up is a true or false task. So there's going to be a series of statements using the language and the terminology that we've learnt in the learning video, and you need to determine whether they are true or false. So first of all, here's one as an example. Metatarsals are anterior to the calcaneum, the heel. So metatarsals, hopefully you will know, are the sort of ball part of your foot, behind your toe, effectively. So the answer to this would be, he will say, true. I'd like you to have a go at the remaining statements on this video. So what you might need to do is pause the video and write them down and write true or false. That's part one of this task. The second thing I need you to do is to then write 10 statements of your own using the same sort of language, any of the language that we learned in the learning video of A1. So there's two parts to this task. Complete mine, the white ones that are there, and then write 10 statements of your own, knowing, of course, whether they are true or false, and try and do a mixture. Okay, so the second task for you to do is called This is the Answer. Basically, I'm going to give you an answer, and you have to write the question to that answer or for that answer. So the first example, if the answer was phalanges, hopefully you can either find out or you might know that phalanges can be the digits or your fingers or your toes. So a question could be, what is distal to the ulna? And the phalanges are distal to the ulna. So the key term I've used there is distal. We've learnt about that. And what we're doing as well, at the same time as using this terminology, is just using other anatomical language, ulnar phalanges. So you will again need to know the names of bones of the body. Hopefully, again, you've got some experience of that. If you've not, get yourself a good resource, a textbook, something online, and you can certainly get the anatomical language you need for this task. Here's another example. The answer is supine. And a question for that could be, what position does a sit-up start from? And the answer is the supine position. So you're going to be given answers and you've got to make up a question. There could be 5 different questions that had supine as the answer. There isn't just one correct version of a question, so don't worry too much about that, as long as it fits and as long as it makes sense. So these are the ones I want you to write questions for. So these here are answers: lateral, superficial, prone, peripheral, and anterior. And you need to make up a suitable question to have these 5 terms as an answer. So the next task is called sentence construction. And this basically, I'm going to give you either a couple of terms or a phrase, and you need to use the language we've been learning about in A1 to construct a sentence. The sentence can be anything, but obviously it's got to make sense. So I should be able to show you an example now. So if I had given you the terms head and hands, what you could do is make up a sentence that said the head is superior to the hands. There could be, again, oodles of other sentences you could have made up, as long as you use some of the terminology we've been learning about. So I've used superior, and you use the 2 terms, the 2 words or the phrase I give you. Another example, if I'd given you the term or phrase press-up position, a sentence you might construct using that, and the relevant terminology could be the press-up position is not in the supine position, as the body is facing the wrong way. So I've almost used a negative description or explanation, but I have used press-up position and I have used supine, and I've shown that I understand what it means. Okay, so these are the terms that you need to construct sentences for. Be as creative as you can. So for me, the second example here was relatively creative. It was a bit more tricky rather than a straightforward sentence. So the first one is tibia and radius. The next one is heart and skeletal muscles. Number 3 is sit-up position. And I think the last one is metatarsals and femur. Skeletal muscles basically are any of your main muscles on the sort of top of your skeleton, so your biceps, triceps, quadriceps, etc., etc., etc. So you've got to make up sentences that include those two, that one, and those two. Lastly then, we will just have a little look at a fairly straightforward exam question format. So this was actually from an exam paper. You can see, importantly at the bottom, it tells you how many marks are available. So total for this question are 2 marks. And given there are 2 parts to it, and actually in brackets here, they've got a 1, so it suggests logically that the first part is worth 1, the second part is worth 1. States there in terms of the question, give the meaning of the following anatomical terms. So you've got to know what these 2 things mean, and you've got to be able to define them or describe what they mean for a mark each. Hopefully, give yourself a go, pause the video, see if you could. Hopefully you'll know, and this is the actual mark scheme, that distal is something which is situated away from the center of the body. And if you got that, you get 1 mark, or a relatively similar phrase. And then, of course, prone is generally often talked about the whole body when the body is lying face down, facing downwards, but also can refer to the palm, so your hand, when your palm is facing downwards. So this is a whole body description. This is just talking about the hand. Again, one of those would get you 1 mark. So having seen how questions are presented and also how mark schemes are designed and prepared, what I'd like you to do is write 3 exam questions of your own. Obviously, you can pick any term, any anatomical language from this A1 section, but I also want you to prepare the mark scheme for them. So there can be 2 or 3 marks per question. As I showed you, it was a 2 marker. But I want you to write 3 whole exam questions. The one I showed you was just 1 exam question. It had a part A, part B. I want you to write 3 exam questions and the mark schemes ready for use. Make sure you state the marks available, of course. And when you're writing your mark schemes, use a clear, concise definition or description as much as possible, just to make it absolutely clear what you're looking for if you had to mark somebody else's work.